we're talking about going on?
Because budget won't be there next week. And that visa thing is getting less.
Welcome back. You're watching the Press Club. Before the break, we were talking about the Guyana election, the outcome. David Granger, now the president, Moses Ramoto, Nagamoto, sorry. Yeah, I've been biting my tongue on that name.
Yes.
Nagamoto is now the new prime minister with wider powers. We're talking about unity. One of the things that I noted in this budget address here in St. Lucia, there's a lot of talk about unity. The need for us to pull together, let us stop the petty bickering, and pull together to deal with the issues confronting the country. I saw a similar theme emerging even during the Senate debate. Mary Isaac, notably, made the call for us to do that. Quite apart from that, in terms of the coverage of the budget, I know the primary budget debate is often given a lot of coverage, a lot of media attention. The Senate debate, for whatever reason, seems to be given less significance.
Yes, I think that's a historical tendency that even I have been guilty of historically, and that is the Senate, even though the Senate is within the context of the formation of the Parliament. Our Parliament has two chambers, the House of Assembly and the Senate. The upper house and the lower house. What people find confusing is that the Senate is the upper house and the House of Assembly is the lower house. The House of Assembly comprises the 17 elected persons to Parliament representing the two parties. The Senate represents or comprises people who are appointed and who didn't run elections, including some who ran elections and lost. So in the public's mind generally, never mind the Senate, within the constitutional authority of the constitutional makeup of the Parliament, the Senate is the upper house, and therefore the President of the Senate is seen to have more constitutional power than the Speaker of the House. Nonetheless, I think that point is not made or registered in people's brains, so they see the Senate and treat it as less than the House, from the standpoint that the Senate doesn't make laws, but the Senate can stop laws. Every law that is accepted in the House has to go to the Senate, has to be debated in the Senate, and if the Senate says no, it has to go back up. Now, traditionally and historically, because of the numbers game and the numerical factor, where both the Senate and the House, the government side always has a majority, then invariably, if the Senate decides, as the Senate normally does, the majority in the Senate, who is the government majority, would tend to vote with whatever is sent to them by the elected government majority. There's also a unique situation where when it comes to money bills, like say the budget, there is a limit at which the Senate authority can go, so that the Senate cannot stop a money bill. They cannot stop the budget. However, their contributions, their concerns, if sent to the Minister of Finance, would have to be taken into account. At the end of the day, nonetheless, the Prime Minister cannot touch one single red or yellow cent from that $1.4 billion until and unless the Senate has had a debate and has closed the debate. Yesterday, for the first time in a very long time, I went all out to try to follow the entire Senate debate. The only time I didn't get was when I had to leave for my radio program. So I saw most of it, and it was quite interesting. There are a couple little nuances in terms of the approach. You had the senators having one day to discuss to debate the budget when the House had two. However, they worked out they worked it out. I think each opted for half an hour and sought for more time if more time was needed. You also had a situation where in many cases the leader of government business, who in the context of the Senate would have been the equivalent of the finance minister on the bill, was asked to explain things many times. I saw a qualitative difference in some of the contributions. I think without pointing to too many persons, I would just identify Dr. James Fletcher as the model parliamentarian of today and tomorrow, not because he had his iPad and was, you know, exhibiting all of the technology during his presentation, but there was a level, he demonstrated a level of preparedness. As a minister who is not elected, he couldn't give an account of what his ministry did in the House. So he would do it in the Senate. But I know that every year he prepares a complete report from every one of his several ministries. And if I were in a position to recommend that every other MP and senator on both sides take that approach, you know, then it would allow them in the House and the Senate to share that information with the people through the press by making, you know, the points available, etc. The Senate thing yesterday, you made reference to the calls for unity. That's been a general call. We hear that every year. We hear it after elections. We hear it coming up to elections. We hear it whenever things look like they're breaking down. And within the context of a parliamentary debate, I don't think that calls for unity in debate are going to work, because the way in which a debate is structured, you know, is for and against. And traditionally, the opposition opposes for opposing sake, because that is what is expected from it. So that in the beginning, from the opening of the opposition's bowling in the Senate debate yesterday, the chairman of the UWP, former agriculture minister, leader of opposition business in the Senate, Ezekiel Joseph, started off from a standpoint that, you know, this is a budget of doom and gloom. Nothing in it is going to work. The road, the road project from Shock to Grozile is useless. It's not going to help anybody. You know, it's a waste of money. And he went on and on, tearing everything down, which led to an intervention by Dr. Fletcher, who was saying, as I've heard others say elsewhere, that, you know, if you want to go into a mudslinging match, we can do that. And then he goes on to show how many things he could have said if that is what we wanted. So I think that might have led to a similar call being made by Senator Mary Isaac. Let's unite and let's discuss things. However,
but you see, and that's one of the reasons why I like you, well, unlike you rather, I prefer to watch the Senate debate, and I follow that one more closely, because I find
the House debate.
No,
House or Senate?
Senate, because I find that the level of maturity and the mature discussion, the level of discussion for me, you know, is higher.
Is it because they don't have to play to a gallery of electors?
Perhaps, I don't know, but I always enjoy Deborah Tobier and Jimmy Fletcher, Le Corbinier's contributions, Stephen King.
Lots of people, by not watching the Senate, they don't get to, including some of us in the media, don't get to appreciate the full depth of Philip Le Corbinier. Folks, that guy's father, you know, he was born into the politics. His father, Dr. Karl Le Corbinier, was not only a successful Castries Central candidate for the Labour Party before independence in the post-adult suffrage period after 1951, but in 1960, after the West Indies Federation was established, when it was established that Sir Grantley Adams of Barbados would have been the Prime Minister of the West Indies Federation, the search went all over CARICOM for a Deputy Prime Minister, all over the Caribbean, the West Indies at the time. And at the end of the day, they selected Dr. Karl Le Corbinier of St. Lucia as the best person to be the Deputy Prime Minister of the Federation, and that is Philip Lokorudye's father. And if one knows anything about his father, and then one watches and listens to the content and delivery in his role as leader of government business in the Senate, as against the caution he has to exhibit as Minister of Home Affairs and National Security, one will better understand better understand a little more about who the man is. And the Star's front page today looks at him from a different light. They say that he's committed a chain of boo-boos.
Yeah, well, as you pointed out, they're looking at him in light of the position of National Security
Minister of National Security.
And as you also pointed out, a lot of people don't follow the Senate discussion.
Yeah, that's why
we're missing it.
So there is the boo-boo side of him that has been interpreted by those who don't know the other side of him in terms of his history or understand his depth of knowledge and content.
Yeah, but I think the issue here, as you pointed out, is the mudslinging, that the level of mudslinging that exists in one as opposed to the other. And I think the calls that have gone out are reflective of calls from the citizenry, the people who want to see less of that mudslinging.
Some of it is happening, you see the unity thing we're talking about.
Yeah.
Last week we didn't get to see it, but Ernst & Young issued an analysis of the Prime Minister's budget address 12 hours after it was presented. And they made some very interesting observations. Most of them were commendable and positive. The negatives were simply saying, listen, we think more ought to have been said about this and more could have been done about that. But they didn't take a club and club the administration. In fact, one of the main conclusions they came to was they were saying that the Minister of Finance's assumption that non-direct taxation is going to help ease the pain seems to be working out. But we also see within the context of the House debate, I don't know whether you saw it, but interestingly within the House, there are members on the opposition side, i.e. Mr. Frederick, who doesn't normally describe himself as an independent, but certainly doesn't carry a UWP oppositionist position insofar as his contributions. During his contribution, he offered the Prime Minister 6 points, 6 things he wanted him to look at if he needs to make things work. In the case of the former Prime Minister, former Minister of Finance, former leader of the opposition, former leader of the UWP, Stephenson King, after making his contributions insofar as the budget content, he did issue a warning to his colleagues that, let's not just see doom and gloom all the way down. Think of tomorrow, think of down the road, and let's see how best we could work together for St. Lucia.
Which is what I think a lot of us want to see more of.
In today's issue of The Voice, there's another interesting equal call. The Voice itself, in its first issue, or in the same issue last Saturday when it carried the Ernst & Young 4-page analysis, The Voice editorial the following week, the Tuesday, did adopt the call on St. Lucia generally to unite around ensuring that we could pull ourselves out of whatever is left of the deep black hole that we have been in for such a long time. However, in today's issue of The Voice, none other than Osbert Dovey, who has been an architect of many budgets before, starts off his article by saying, well, for the first time in a long time, he sat to watch the presentations in the House. He starts off by saying he was not impressed at all by the efforts of the leader of the opposition to make it look as a doom and gloom budget. He comments on various aspects of the presentations, but he concludes, like the Ernst & Young people, of saying that, listen, the government is going in the right direction. It could have been doing more here. It could have been doing more over there. But the opposition's claim that it is all doom and gloom is just not correct. So I think we're beginning to see that qualitative shift in public response, public reaction to the bickering that has historically manifested itself in both houses, the Senate and the House. I think today the senators and the MPs are more aware that in the age of television, instant media, etc., that the populace, the electorate, you know, the people generally are more aware. They can see better, they can come to better analyses, and they no longer see government and opposition as being too far removed to be concerned about what they do. I think people do know that they have power, even though it's exercised once a year. But the social media allows more people to be able to exercise that power in many different ways by being able to get direct access to the MP. You know, the Prime Minister have about 6,000 Facebook people. I don't know how many of them he actually knows, but he's in touch with them. MPs on both sides of the house always in their you know, their cell phones, because now they're allowed to they've been given tablets, you know, by Digicel, and I often wondered why Lyman worried to just give them phones, you know, to equalize the thing. But
I'm hoping that what you're saying there is going to be reflected in the turnout for the next election. We were talking about Guyana earlier. There was a 20% increase, you know, in voter turnout, and I wonder, is that, you know, just desperation to see the back of the PPP, or is it a reflection of, you know, people's a greater interest among, especially young people?
I think the latter.
You know, in
the
politics.
latter. In the case of Guyana, like in St. Lucia and everywhere else, historically elections have been fought by the older generation, and for decades now, we've been hoping and praying that younger people will get more involved. I think through the social media, they are getting. The politics is coming to them. It's being sent to them, but it's also coming to them by virtue of the wide range of sources of information that they have. My sons from time to time call me, surprisingly, to tell me, look at something that is, in my realm, political, you know, which I never really expected them, but maybe they had been viewing it and felt that it would be something of interest to me. Now, why did they think it's of interest to me? Because they looked at it, because, you know, they got into it. So I think in the case of St. Lucia, it is for the parties to decide what is their position on increasing the youth vote. The National Youth Council for Independence this year, the lecture series, Independence Lecture, was along the lines, the question was, should the voting age be reduced further from 18 to 16? Because that's what's happening in many places where they find the young people are coming to vote. So they lower the, but I don't think that that is the answer.
We're due for a break. Let's take the break. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation. We can elaborate further on that point. This is the Press Club. We'll be right back.